I grew up Amish, and one of the things I remember most clearly as a little girl is walking through our family garden in the early morning, bare feet on cool soil, and noticing something that never made sense to me until I got older. We never had a pest problem, not like the neighbors around us who were spraying and fighting their gardens every single season. Our garden was full, our plants were healthy, and my mother and grandmother never once reached for a chemical spray bottle. Not once. What they did instead is what I want to share with you today. And I promise you, by the time this video is over, you are going to look at your garden completely differently. My name is Sarah. I grew up in an Amish community in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I left the community as an adult, and I have spent the years since then bridging the gap between the old world I came from and the modern world most of you are living in. The things I learned growing up, the gardening methods, the food preservation, the frugal living, they are not myths. They are not Pinterest trends. They are real, generations-deep knowledge that actually works. And today, I am going to walk you through the exact methods the Amish have used for over 300 years to keep garden pests away permanently, without a single dollar spent on chemicals. If this is your first time here and you want more of this kind of real, old-world, practical knowledge, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now and give this video a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who are tired of the chemical solution being the only solution anyone talks about. Let me start with something that changed how I think about gardening entirely. The Amish do not approach a pest problem by asking how to kill the pest. They ask a completely different question. They ask why the pest is there in the first place. That one shift in thinking is the foundation of everything I am about to share with you. Modern gardening culture has conditioned people to see a bug and immediately think about elimination, spray it, poison it, trap it. But the Amish understanding, which I watched lived out every single day as a child, is that a garden overrun with destructive pests is a garden that is out of balance. And the solution is not to attack the pest. The solution is to restore the balance. Everything else flows from that. The very first method, and arguably the most powerful, is soil health. This might not sound exciting, but stay with me because this is where it all begins. Healthy, biologically active soil grows strong plants. Strong plants are naturally resistant to pest damage. This is not a theory. Research from the Rodell Institute, which has studied organic and Amish-adjacent farming practices for decades, confirms that plants grown in living, compost-rich soil produce compounds in their tissues that make them significantly less attractive and less vulnerable to insect attack. The Amish have known this intuitively for centuries. In our community, every family maintained a compost pile the way other people maintain a bank account. Food scraps, garden waste, manure from the animals, all of it went back into the ground. Every single season, before anything was planted, the beds were turned with compost. Not synthetic fertilizer, not a bag from the garden center. Real, decomposed organic matter that fed the microbes, the earthworms, and ultimately the plants themselves. A plant that is getting everything it needs from the soil is not a target. Pests, especially sucking insects like aphids, preferentially attack stressed and nutritionally deficient plants. Fix the soil, and you remove one of the biggest reasons pests show up at all. The second method is companion planting, and this is something I find so beautiful because it reflects a whole worldview. Nothing in the Amish garden grows in isolation. Every plant has neighbors chosen intentionally. This is not a new idea. The Native Americans practiced it with their Three Sisters system, planting corn, beans, and squash together. And the Amish have layered their own centuries of observation on top of traditions like that. Here is how it worked in our garden. Marigolds were planted along every single border and tucked between the vegetable rows. This was not for decoration. Marigolds, specifically the French marigold variety, release a compound from their roots called alpha-terthienol, which is toxic to nematodes in the soil. Their strong scent also confuses and repels aphids, whiteflies, and tomato hornworm moths. My grandmother planted marigolds around her tomatoes every single year without exception. She could not have told you the name of that compound, but she knew what 3 generations before her had proven. It worked. Nasturtiums were another staple. Now nasturtiums work differently. They are what gardeners call a trap crop. Aphids love nasturtiums. They will go straight for them and leave your vegetables alone. My mother planted nasturtiums at the outer edges of the garden deliberately to pull pests away from the food plants. She would check them, find them covered in aphids, and feel satisfied because those aphids were exactly where she wanted them, away from the beans and squash. When the nasturtium plant got overwhelmed, she pulled it, dropped it in the compost, and planted a new one. Simple, free, and incredibly effective. Basil was grown alongside every tomato plant without exception. This is one of those companion planting combinations that has been studied extensively and consistently shows results. Basil's volatile oils, specifically linalool and eugenol, repel thrips, aphids, and tomato hornworm moths. The Amish did not need a university study to validate this. The evidence was in their gardens every season. Dill and fennel were grown near the brassicas, the cabbages, and kale to attract parasitic wasps. Now this brings me to the third method, which is working with beneficial insects rather than killing everything indiscriminately. Most people reach for a pesticide and destroy every insect in range. The Amish understanding is that most insects in your garden are either neutral or actively helpful. Ladybugs eat aphids, ground beetles eat cutworm larvae, parasitic wasps lay their eggs inside caterpillar pests, eliminating them entirely. Lacewings eat soft-bodied insects by the hundreds. If you spray chemicals, you kill all of these helpers along with the pests. And then the pests rebound faster than the beneficials can recover, and you end up in an endless chemical dependency cycle. The Amish gardener actively cultivates habitat for beneficial insects. In our community, there was always a patch of flowering herbs near the garden. Dill allowed to go to flower, fennel, yarrow, and clover. These flowering plants provide nectar for adult beneficial insects, which then hunt the pests on your vegetables. This costs nothing. It requires zero maintenance once established, and it creates a self-regulating system where the garden essentially polices itself. The fourth method is wood ash, and this one surprises people every time I mention it. Every Amish household burns wood, and that ash is one of the most valuable things you can produce on a homestead. Wood ash is highly alkaline and abrasive. When you dust it around the base of your plants and along garden bed borders, it creates a barrier that slugs and snails simply will not cross. The alkalinity burns the moisture from their bodies. It also deters soft-bodied insects and ants. In our home, after every fire in the wood stove, the ash was collected in a tin bucket. Come spring and throughout summer, that ash was dusted lightly around the vulnerable plants, particularly the brassicas and lettuce, which slugs absolutely devastate. It was completely free, a byproduct of heating the home. Nothing went to waste, and the garden was protected. If you burn wood at all, you have this resource already. You are just not using it yet. The fifth method is the one that takes the most discipline, but delivers some of the most dramatic results. Crop rotation. This is something that commercial agriculture largely abandoned in favor of monoculture and chemical dependency, but the Amish never stopped doing it. In traditional Amish farming, the same crop is never planted in the same location 2 years in a row. The sequence is intentional and specific. Here is why this matters for pest control. Most garden pests are plant-specific. The larvae of the squash vine borer overwinter in the soil beneath last year's squash. The eggs of the cabbage root fly are laid in the soil of the cabbage bed. When you plant the same crop in the same location year after year, you are essentially setting the table for an explosion of pest populations that are perfectly adapted to attack exactly what you are growing. When you rotate, those overwintering larvae hatch and find themselves underneath beans or tomatoes instead of squash. The population crashes, no chemicals required. The system we used followed a loose pattern of heavy feeders like corn and tomatoes, followed by light feeders like root vegetables, followed by soil builders like beans and peas, which fix nitrogen from the air. This also keeps the soil healthy, which brings everything back to that first principle of strong plants being naturally resistant plants. The sixth method is something I watched my grandmother do that seemed almost too simple to work, and yet I watched it work for decades. Hand removal, early morning scouting, and what she called staying ahead of it. Every morning, without fail, she walked through the garden, not casually. She turned leaves over. She looked at stems. She checked the undersides of cabbage leaves for the tiny yellow eggs of the cabbage worm butterfly. She picked off hornworm caterpillars by hand and dropped them into a jar of water. She crushed aphid colonies on the spot with her fingers. This sounds tedious, and by modern standards, it is not efficient in the way we think about efficiency now. But here is the thing. A hornworm caterpillar caught on day 1 is 20 hornworms prevented in the next cycle. Catching an aphid colony before it explodes means you never reach the point where the infestation is out of control. My grandmother spent maybe 15 minutes in that garden every morning and had the most productive, pest-free garden I have ever seen in my life. The investment was time, not money. And the return was a garden that consistently produced enough to feed our family and preserve food for winter. The seventh method ties all of this together, and it is the one most people overlook entirely: diversity. The Amish never planted a monoculture garden, not even close. At any given time, our garden had dozens of different plants growing simultaneously in close proximity. Tomatoes beside basil, beside marigolds, beside carrots, beside dill, beside beans, beside nasturtiums, beside herbs of all kinds. Pest insects navigate by scent and visual cues. When you plant 100 tomato plants in a row, you create a highway of scent that leads every tomato-specific pest directly to your food. When your tomatoes are interspersed among a dozen other plant species, the scent signal is broken up and confused. The pests struggle to locate their host plants. This is called olfactory masking, and while the Amish did not use that term, the practice itself is baked into their entire gardening tradition. This diversity also supports the web of beneficial insects, soil organisms, and natural predators that keep the entire system in balance. It is not a single trick. It is an entire ecosystem that you are cultivating deliberately. Now I want to give you one more thing that I consider the most practical takeaway from this video. A simple spray that was made in Amish kitchens for as long as I can remember. You take 1 medium onion, 4 garlic cloves, 2 tablespoons of cayenne pepper, and blend them together with 2 cups of water. Let that mixture steep for 24 hours, then strain it, add a tablespoon of natural dish soap, and fill your spray bottle with it. Spray the leaves of your plants, tops, and undersides every week and after every rain. This spray repels aphids, mites, caterpillars, beetles, and a wide range of chewing insects. The sulfur compounds in the onion and garlic are chemical irritants to soft-bodied insects. The capsaicin in the cayenne is intolerable to most insects. The dish soap helps it adhere to the leaf surface. The total cost is almost nothing. Every ingredient is something you likely already have, and it is completely safe for your plants, your soil, your beneficial insects when used correctly, and your family. I made this spray as a child. My mother made it. Her mother made it before her. It is real, it has been tested across generations, and it works. Here is what I want you to walk away with today. The Amish did not keep their gardens pest-free through luck or through some ancient mystical knowledge. They did it through observation, through understanding how natural systems work, and through practicing methods that build resilience into the garden rather than treating symptoms after the fact. Healthy soil, diverse planting, companion plants that confuse and repel, beneficial insects that hunt the pests, wood ash barriers, diligent rotation, and daily attention. None of this costs significant money. All of it requires intention and consistency. I grew up watching this system work flawlessly in a community that did not have the option of throwing money at problems. They solved problems with knowledge and with time. That knowledge does not belong only to the Amish. It belongs to anyone willing to learn and apply it. That is why I am here. That is what this channel is about. If you got value from this video, please take a second to give it a like. It helps more people find this information, and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. I have so much more to share about how the community I grew up in solved everyday problems with almost zero cost, and it is all coming. I will see you in the next video.